following presentation is a Delmarva Studios production.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Flat Earth Files. I'm your host, as always, George Hobbs. Hope you had a great weekend. I've gotten a lot of emails tonight. By the way, we have our guest, Cason, standing by, who's going to be joining us for a conversation here in just a minute. And he is the host of the Awake the Iron podcast. And you can check out all his work on awaketheiron.com. But one quick note, as I'm recording here shortly after 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I continue to get emails saying that I was listening to your podcast and it disappeared. And it was a good podcast. It was from Tyler Doka and the Pillar of Truth. And he gave a very good 2-hour sermon in regards to Flat Earth. However, shortly after I posted it, I started to get emails saying, hey, you may want to check this guy out. He believes he's Jesus Christ. And sure enough, you go to his Pillar of Truth Christian Church YouTube channel where you click on About, and it says this is the official YouTube channel of the Pillar of Truth Christian Church, featuring Tyler Doka, who is the true and prophesied Christ of the Bible. So I made the decision at that point to go ahead and pull the audio. I'm not going to give someone like that a platform. So that was my decision. And again, as good as a sermon as it was, I just can't give someone like that a spot on my platform. So that's the reason why it disappeared. I just want to let you all know it wasn't a glitch. Big Tech didn't take it down. It was my decision. All right, so we have that out of the way. By the way, tomorrow night we have another listener interview, Megan, tomorrow evening, so that should be released early Wednesday morning. But joining us tonight and being very patient as I worked out my technical glitches, again, from the Awake the Iron podcast and awaketheiron.com, please welcome to the program, Cason. Cason, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I am excellent. I really appreciate being on. Thanks, George.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And, let's kick it off. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your journey to the truth, if you will.
Absolutely. And although everyone's journey is a little bit unique, I guess they're kind of similar, and a lot of people probably relate to this. And I've been looking into things for a long time, diving down rabbit holes and things and being skeptical. And one day, someone close to me that I really respect says, "Hey, I think the Earth might be flat." And I was just like, face palm, oh my gosh, are you kidding me right now? That was the reaction. And I literally cried. I was so upset. And not because of the information that I got, but because I thought, this person was going to have to go be put away in like an insane asylum or something. But he's really smart and reasonable and a really good thinker. So I just stopped and I was like, I wonder what made him actually think, because he was serious, actually think that. And he's a deep researcher too. And I'm like, well, I'll have to see. And so I did the first step, which was just to be honest with myself. And usually once you do that and you just step back and look, things start being apparent, especially with this topic. And, once you go flat, you never go back, right?
That's right. There's no going. Once you take the red pill, it's over.
It is. It really is. And, that's probably pretty similar. That was about 5 years ago. And of course, just like usual, I pretty much haven't studied much else, right? It'd been and that first month or two was a doozy. Probably no sleep at all.
Yep, I can relate.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of people probably have a similar experience. That was mine.
And have you had any luck explaining Flat Earth to your friends and family? Have you developed a way to kind of present it to you? Because
Well,
if you remember your initial reaction to when your friend, who you thought was very smart and matter of fact, and the way you reacted, did you think about how you could present it to others and they not get that same reaction?
right, exactly. And that's not at first, right? At first, I was just, just pedal to the metal, learn, 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 sponge, sponge, everything, right? And eventually I did come to the realization, I'm like, when there's a point, you hit that point where you're like, this is for real, right? And once you do that, you're like, my whole life is probably going to change. Like, how's this going to work? How do you even talk to people? And I did start thinking about, how am I going to start talking to people? And what I did was, for 18 months, this is no joke, 18 months, I did nothing else in my free time than study this topic and talked to no one. And it was just bottled up inside, and I kept going and going and going. And I absolutely dreaded talking to my wife. And she's pretty awake about stuff, and I just didn't look forward to it. But finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore, and I was shaking and like, I need to talk to you. And she probably thought something was really terrible, and I was like, I don't know what this is going to do to us. I'm thinking in my head, but I sat her down. I said, I don't want you to think less of me or think I'm crazy, but just let me explain.
Right.
And for about an hour and a half, maybe more, I talked straight, solid, nonstop. And this is the best part, George. When I got done and I'm waiting for a reaction, she just looked at me and she goes, figures.
Wow, she absolutely bought into it 100%.
Well, and she didn't think it was a stretch, I think, to think that we had been deceived on that level, because she's pretty aware of other pretty big deceptions.
Sure.
But so here I was. I should have been leaning on her. Take a lesson from that. Any husbands, don't underestimate your wife as a support system. So yeah, but then it was like, oh, and they don't all go that way, of course, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but so I've been learning, I've been studying, I've been listening, talking to people, and to be honest, to be very honest, I have not talked about this on my podcast yet, and I had a whole idea when this started. I started the podcast in 2021. Right at the tail end of and height of like COVID stuff. And, I started the podcast for a specific reason, mainly just to talk about stuff, because it was all bottling up, flat earth stuff, but other stuff too. And I started doing that, and it just made me feel better. I don't know. And maybe you've experienced this too. You just talk about it with people, and, it's funny because some people criticize and say, oh, you conspiracy theorists or you flat earthers, whatever, you just all you do is you get in your echo chamber and you talk to only people that agree with you. And that's all you do. And I'm sitting here thinking, we literally live everywhere that people disagree with us. Like, aren't we allowed to have one place where I can have a conversation with somebody like maybe George, and George isn't gonna call me stupid, or crazy or whatever. And he's just gonna listen and say, yeah, I've learned some of those things too. So when people say that, it irritates me, but it's been a heck of a journey for sure.
And I look at it as, I thought I was a truther, but I didn't really understand how big the lie was until Flat Earth. And that completely changed my life. It brought me back closer to God. I realized that there most certainly is a creator. And I just realized that, wow, they're lying about everything. There's nothing that they won't lie about. They have the power of the television, the internet. It's very funny. Me and my wife watch a lot of classic TV because there's nothing, very little redeeming on today. So we were actually on, I think it's some free TV thing on the Roku. Leave It to Beaver came on, and I always talk about how around that 1958 time frame, where you started to see the globe more prevalent in movies and television. And sure enough, we looked up. That episode was in 1959. They had a globe in the Beaver's bedroom, in the living room. And I mean, it's in the classroom. They're really pushing this thing. And you don't see those things prior to it, no matter how awake you think you are. And again, you said you haven't brought it up on your podcast, just buckle up. You will get a little bit of blowback. You won't get a whole lot, but you will get people who will take time and email. And that's just a decision that you have to make. You see what I did. Every time I brought it up, I got a bunch of emails. I said, well, I'll keep it to a minimum on one podcast, but I think it's such an important topic. I decided to make a complete other podcast as the main event. And I think it's very important we discuss this. And it bothers me a little bit that even my own family members that ridiculed me in 2020, saying that I was just watching YouTube videos, and that's the reason why I didn't want any part of a vaccine. Not to mention all the books I've read. They think we just sit around and watch YouTube videos with our tinfoil hats on. And, I continue to say that they overplayed their hand with COVID, and they really showed how big the lies are. And another thing I will say before I turn it back over to you, I have noticed within the last 6 months to a year, people are a little more open to the flat earth because of the lies of, just in the last 3 years, the lies of COVID. They're seeing the United States empty their vault and weaponry to the most corrupt country in Eastern Europe. So people, even the most people that we will say that are sleepwalking, are beginning to understand how big the lie actually is.
Well, absolutely. And if I may, just this just came the other day. Out of the blue, I get a text from my old boss, and we don't work together anymore. It's been maybe a year and a half or so. He says, here's the text. He says, it seems, so this is out of the blue, remember. All of a sudden I get this. He says, it seems that weekly we learn more about how things were incorrect, handled poorly, or flat out lies during COVID. You were right the entire time, and not many people will tell you that, but you deserve to hear it.
That is amazing that you got that. I wish my wife would get something like that.
Well, and I don't share that to like toot my own horn, like hee, yay, I'm
absolutely
right, you're wrong. I wish I wasn't right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not like some kind of prophet or anything. All I'm interested in is the truth. And I try to look at things that way. And that's what's very irritating when people say, like you were saying, people think that all you do is, tinfoil hat and you just, conspiracy theorists. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in theories. I'm interested in what's true. I know that where we live is flat. People say, well, what about mountains? You know what I mean? It's level and it's not moving. I know this, and I'm interested in what's true. And I think I'm trying to stay away from using the word believe, right? Because believe, what is it? Crow 777 says, belief is the enemy of knowing. I know where I stand is firm, non-moving, and it's level. I don't like the term conspiracy theorist is a weaponized term created by the CIA anyway.
Yep.
But yeah. And so this is what irritates me when people just, fly off the handle or whatever. And I mean, this is kind of the whole reason that I reached out to you, is I see a need for people like me, like you. I see a need for us to really think about how to talk to people about it. And that I don't. I'll have to make a quick correction because a couple episodes ago with that Brian guy, I think it was, you actually mentioned that you were going to talk to me, and you said, "Oh, I think he's got a system on how to talk to people." Uh, I, I I think I have some good ideas, but it's not a proven system.
Sure, sure,
So
sure.
I have some things that I think could be helpful. Some have been tested. I've tested on people, and some I haven't yet.
You have
But
some tools for the toolbox.
tools for the toolbox, yeah.
There you go.
Maybe it won't work, maybe it will, but I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about because I really like your show, and a lot of the things you say, a lot that I resonate with me. I've learned a lot of the same things you have, and I think within listeners like us, I think this might be kind of a little more of a subject that I don't hear talked about as much, and so I just thought it might be interesting.
Yeah, and before you get into that, I do have one question for you.
Sorry, maybe I jumped the gun.
No,
Sorry
no,
about
no,
that.
no, 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 not at all. But I just one question before we jump into it that I think might be pertinent before we get into that. Was there a particular piece of evidence when you finally, like myself, 4 years ago, when you finally lifted the veil and said, "Fine, I will look, but I'm going in to disprove it," was kind of my mentality. Was there something that you came across that and you felt that rush through your body and you knew that, yep, the ball is live? Was there one piece of evidence that really put the nail in the proverbial coffin, if you will?
Right. For me, it is water. So water doesn't lie.
Always finds its
Um,
level.
Correct. And I grew up around construction, and water is the baseline for construction, and basing things off of level and straight. And no matter how hard I tried to justify um, my cognitive dissonance and the programming, I remember I decided I chose to be honest with myself, and I just couldn't get around water. And like water just always, it has properties that are irrefutable. And so there's, you can throw words out like gravity and things like that, but when you spend some time looking, you're like, man, water is level. I mean, good Lord, you use a level to make things level, right?
That's right.
And you start learning about words having meanings, and horizon is horizontal, and you can easily define these, and nobody even argues about these definitions. But it's always, well, but as far as the earth, it it breaks that rule, right? And there's plenty of other good ones, but for me, the nail in the coffin was water.
Yeah, that is a big one. And the other one for me personally was, you come to realize when you do the math, 8 inches per mile squared, and you can just simply see too far. And I think the Nikon P900 was really a tool that flat earthers rejoiced when they got hold of it and could bring ships that had disappeared over the horizon right back into focus.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. You have to, when you see that, right? So me personally, I don't have a Nikon P1000 or 900. I haven't been able to do those super zoom type things. Lots of people have. I've seen videos of that. And people would say, well, you didn't do it yourself or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But um it's pretty compelling, right? When you see that stuff. And you're like, yeah, how are we seeing that? And then they throw math at you, they throw refraction, and I'm like, and it all to the newbie, right? I went through my newbie phase, and I would be like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I would Google, and then it's like, oh, it's refraction. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I don't really know that much about refraction, so you know that's probably the answer. But then you can find information detailing refraction, and you can start figuring things out and be like, oh, well, there's a lot of assumptions in there. Or, I was blown away throughout this journey that throughout we'll just say the mainstream like scientific community, that there are so many things that are built up from assumptions. And it just blew my mind. And I just didn't know, right? The guy in the lab coat told me this, and I don't have a lab coat, so he's right, I guess. And he wouldn't want to. He's not a bad guy, right? Why would he lie, right?
Right.
You had an episode called "Why the Lie." Actually, maybe it was the first one. Um, yeah, why the lie? Well, he wouldn't lie. We trust people, right? I
That's right.
trust you. You say your name's George. I mean, you have a whole show, so it's probably is. But
My
you
name might
say,
be Steve, and I could reside in
yeah,
Oregon.
right. I trust that that's true, and but if I found out that, and that'd be a trivial, that'd be a pretty small lie if you're like, okay, well, my name's really something else. But if you did lie, I would have to at least recognize, okay, well, that guy lied. So, I'm not really going to trust what you say from here on out, probably without checking. And I'm not unreasonable to do that because you lied. So, but for some reason, when we do that today, whether it's about, flat Earth, or whether it's about, you know, getting a jab in your arm, or whether it's about supposed viruses, and you're like, you know what, I'd like to ask some questions. It's like, nope, you can't. Sorry, you're banned. You're deleted. You're fired. Whatever it is, it's like, oh my gosh, what? Why in the world, right? And I forget the person who said it. There's a quote that says, "I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be
Be
questioned."
questioned. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like that. So did I answer your question? Oh, it
Yeah.
was the one proof, right? The single proof.
The
Yeah.
water,
Water for me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back to what we were saying about their math, they said, well, you didn't take your Nikon out and check. Nikola Tesla, a guy who was robbed and plagiarized and died penniless, had something I've referred to quite often. He said, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. And if you go back in history, you'll see many times they moved the distance of the moon and the sun just so it would fit, that math equation would fit their heliocentric model.
Absolutely. And there's Dave Weiss has been doing in some of his talks lately. It's going to be hard to describe without people seeing it, but if people watch any of Dave Weiss's some of his newer interviews, he does this thing now, which is excellent, where he has these three lines across the screen. They're colored, and he's like, are they the same? Which one's higher than the other? Well, the one on top, the yellow one, and then the orange one's in the middle, and the red one's in the bottom, right? But then, and then he says you can make a math equation like, 2x, two yellow equals 1 minus,
Yeah.
he'll make a couple equations that are simple and correct. Then he shows an image of like a beach scene, and those lines are there, and you realize that the top line is actually the horizon,
Yep.
which is the water level, and the middle line is the land in the foreground, so it's actually higher than the water, and then the bottom line is actually like the porch of where the photo is taken, which elevation wise is the highest. So he was saying that you can make equations about these lines, but they aren't reality necessarily. And I thought it was an awesome like visual explanation of that, how the math can be correct with everything that's going on, but it's not reality necessarily. Math can represent reality.
Sure.
Yeah. But Uh, I know it's a kind of a bad explanation because you really need to see it, but I just had to point it out because it is so good.
No, I agree. And I think mathematics and those type of equations should be supportive. You experiments going out and doing things like the Bedford level experiment and all those experiments that were done in the late 1800s that failed to prove heliocentrism. So they conjured up Einstein and all these other folks come up with these great equations. And in retrospect, it's kind of a joke, and that lends credence to something I talk about on my other podcast quite often is the public school system and how corrupted it's become. And even then, recently it's come out, the CIA's kind of admitted, yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald kind of didn't do it, but the history books will never change. I'm willing to bet that 75% of the people, well, that's probably high. What percent of the American population do you believe actually thinks that we went to the moon?
The percentage that actually thinks we went.
Yeah. So if you were stand out in front of Walmart and ask 100 people, random people that were walking in, did we go to the moon in 1969? How many of them do you think that would say, yeah, we did?
Maybe 50%. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I don't think it's very high.
I don't either. And we had Bart Sabrell on last week, and all he's been doing for the last 20 plus years is trying to expose it. And while he's not really a flat Earth guy, he is correct 100% on the fact if we could expose NASA for the absolute Enron that they are, right? They make Enron look like Girl Scouts. As much money if they had swindled over the last, I guess we're closing on 70 years now. And I'm sure you've seen all the videos on YouTube of NASA's greatest hits and guys with the harnesses on their waist when they're doing flips or flying across the background or dropping screws at free fall speed when they're acting like they're in slow motion. That would, I think, start a chain of effects like dominoes if we could get them to publicly admit that we never went to the moon.
I think you're right. And some of those clips are so dumb that you're just like, how did I ever fall for that? Yeah. But I mean, but earlier you said something about that through the COVID, it's almost like they overplayed their hand, or you said something to that effect.
Yeah, I do believe so.
And that we've seen exactly what you're talking about with that, even this domino effect a little bit. Like my boss who reaches out to me, say, man, there's some crazy stuff going on. Like it does have an effect where kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid, like it was really terrible. Those were dark times, but because of it, people are maybe a little more skeptical, which is good. People are opening up their Bibles,
Yes.
I know Flat Earth has done that a lot. People just start looking at scriptures just to see, oh, what does it actually say? If somebody's like, I don't believe in the Bible, whatever, but they start looking at Flat Earth and they're like, oh my gosh. And then you really can't deny that it's like created, right?
That's right.
And and then people start opening their Bibles just to see the Flat Earth Bible verses. And what do you know, right? They're like, oh my gosh, there's a creator, and then maybe they read some more, right? And that's really awesome to me, that there can be some good out of it. It really sucked when it was going on. 2020 was the darkest time that I know of in my lifetime. I'm 46, but maybe there's some good things that can happen from it, like this domino effect. Right. So maybe even that starts people looking at taking a second look at some of these NASA videos. Maybe they hand waved those videos off before, but now, like before COVID, but now they're like, oh, there's some chicanery going on. And so they're like, these one guys were talking about NASA and stuff. Maybe I'll give these another look. Right. That's my hope, That's how it happens. It goes that way. So
Yeah. And you're right. They open their Bible, they see the word firmament. Then they really start to look into it and really understand how God created the earth. And one of the things now, I will stand outside, I'll look at the sun during the day and look at the moon during the night. And I'll say to myself, so I thought for all those years that that thing right there was 239,000 miles away. And that thing right there that seems about the same distance is 93 million miles away. And it's just, you can't unsee these things, right?
Well, absolutely right. And you asked what the one nail in the coffin proof was, and I said water. But for me, on the flip side of that, the one mystery that is the most mysterious to me is the moon.
Absolutely.
My son and I look at it all the time. It was out last night. It was kind of like a crescent, or not quite a quarter moon or whatever. And I was looking at it, and we're just like, what is it? Like, I want to know what it is. But I know what it's not, right? And I'm not going to make any claims on what it is, but I know what it's not. It's not a dusty rock,
Absolutely.
a quarter of a million miles away. That is ridiculous.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. So let's kind of slide on into some ways you've developed to maybe bring up or introduce Flat Earth to folks.
Absolutely. So there's a couple like little precursors that I've thought about, and I've asked some people these things. And you first have, I don't think it's wise to try to engage with someone who is not interested.
Agree.
Right. And that might sound obvious, but you can even find yourself doing this without even thinking that you're like really trying to get someone to, see the truth, and they don't want to. And so the first thing you do is, like if you know somebody really well, then some of these you already know the answer to, but you can just flat out tell somebody, or ask them, are you willing to be wrong? Are you okay with being wrong about something? Right. And a lot of people might say, yeah, sure, whatever. But, if you pay attention to how they're talking, after they say that, you can catch them and say, well, wait a minute. You said you're willing to admit you're wrong about something, and I'm showing you this, and this is what we all used to think, but like, this isn't right. So another thing is, are you open? And you can just ask this, right? Say, hey, if they say, you really think, maybe they know you think the earth is flat, right? So they say, you really think the earth is flat? How could that be, right? Or whatever. And I would say something like, well, are you open to changing your mind based on new information? And I think of things a lot like in a courtroom. So I'm a super logical person. Like, emotions in my decisions, they're just not present. I make very logical decisions, just kind of like tactically.
Good.
And I'm not like tooting my own horn. That's just how my mind operates. So I'm not saying I've never, flown off the handle, but that's just how I work. So in a courtroom, you hear from the prosecutor, you hear from the defense, and then that's all of the information. I know some court cases, whatever, you don't get all the information. It's just an example, right?
Sure.
You get both sides. It's all laid out. All the evidence is all laid out. Then you go back and deliberate and make your decision. If you're on the jury, let's say, right? Well, I like that. That's fair. And if I digress for a second and think about during COVID, all we got was one side of the information.
That's right.
You weren't even allowed to see or talk about anything else. That's not fair. That's not even allowed in a courtroom. But if we're talking about evidence, right? That's stupid. That's not how we operate. We're allowed to have all the information. And so for people, if we're talking about flat Earth, people just jump in, and another precursor I like to say that goes right along with, hey, are you willing to change your mind based on new information? Is if they say, well, that's stupid, whatever it is, right? I would ask, hey, how many hours have you spent researching that? All right. I lost count, George. How many hours?
Oh, I couldn't even begin to calculate.
Yeah. I can't even guess.
Right.
I mean, it's so much. 5 years, pretty much all my free time. So whatever hours that is. So how dare somebody, and this, I wouldn't say this to someone, because I think we should be kind and patient, and we should remember our journey too. And so a lot of us resist it as well. But how dare you tell me, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm talking, thousands of hours, and you've done zero, and you're gonna come at me and make fun of me. And I tell you what, right? Oh, okay. If someone says, how do you explain seasons? Let's just pull a topic. How do you explain seasons on a flat Earth? I say, okay, you can find out. Go. I can shoot things your way, because you're not going to get great stuff if you look yourself. But I tell you what, you study how seasons work on a flat Earth for 6 months straight. Then we'll talk again. Right? You can handle some people that way. And then, if they're not really interested, like, oh, I'm not doing 6 months. Well, that's what it's going to take. Like, if we want to have an even conversation about the subject, you need that kind of, your kung fu needs to be strong. And I'm not saying I'm a black belt at my flat Earth kung fu, but my kung fu is strong, dude.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm confident. I don't have all the answers. And if there's something that I don't know, I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, people like us, we were on the other side. We changed our mind based on new information. And all I'm after is what's true and what's real. And if I'm not a liar, though, I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong about something. But there's two things. I'm not a liar, and I'm after the truth. So I think the Earth is flat because I think it's true. And the reason I think it's true is because I was told what it was before, and I didn't think about it. And now I've thought about it on my own without, the programming. I took a fresh look. I threw it all away and started over, let's say. And I decided to just think about it and learn on my own. And I think it's flat because I think it's true.
That's really well said. And there's a couple things I want to bounce off you. Number one, if they ridicule you, without ridiculing them back, because that'll just the conversation will dissolve.
Right.
You can prove to them very easy how little they know about the heliocentric model. If you ask them how many miles away from Earth is the sun, they're not going to. 90% of them aren't going to say 93 million miles.
Correct.
Very few of them will know without going on their phone how far away the moon is, or the curvature math, and all these type of things. And after a couple of those type of questions, maybe they'll be a little more humble and a little more opening to hear you. But again, whether it's 9/11, Oklahoma City, or Flat Earth, they have to be willing to take the step.
You're absolutely right. And that's, those few like screening questions, that I threw out there, where there's kind of my idea of like, this is how you decide who to spend time on is, and it's not like some secret thing where I'm just going to keep information from people. That's not what it's about. Right? It's about dead ends. If someone's a dead end and all they want to do is make fun of you and not listen, you are a higher vibrating being, or I don't even know the words, but if that's the case, that person will drag you down.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need that. Just cut that away and pray for them. Maybe that you could do that. And you could even offer, uh, hey, when you're ready to just actually talk about it, and you listen to me and I'll listen to you, I promise. I'm always open, but right now you're resisting the conversation. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna waste my energy on that.
Yeah, 100%. And part of the reluctancy is because I think part of it is not just, it's kind of a crutch to say public education, but it's the way it's utilized, that because it's in a textbook, and I've done episodes that show who is behind the making of our textbooks, predominantly McGraw-Hill, and Ghislaine Maxwell's father owned McGraw-Hill during the 80s, that if it's in a textbook that is in school, then it must be truth. Whereas a real scientist always tests things, right, for better avenues of approach. And I wish we would see an education system where everything would be tested. Imagine being in a history class and the history teacher says, all right, we're going to read chapter 4 about 9/11. 19 hijackers flew 3 planes, 2 into the World Trade Center. 3 buildings fell, though, and a plane hit the Pentagon, although the most protected building in the world only had 1/8 of a millisecond of video, and just challenge the students. How is that disrespectful? I mean, I have, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, proven time and time again that you cannot trust this government. It's not to be believed. So why aren't grown adults challenging the education system at this point?
I mean, that's a great question. And I would have to chalk it up to just the programming, I guess. Our brains have been turned into gravy. I'm getting mine back, right? And I'm taking mine back, and I'm starting to use it. But a term we hear a lot is the science is settled. Well, the science is settled, but it's oxymoronic.
Sure.
Because science is never settled. You're always testing, and even when you think you found, like you observe a natural phenomenon, you have a hypothesis or what's causing what, right? You got the independent variable, the dependent variable. You alter the one and see the effect, and then you see if your hypothesis is correct, or you prove that it's not correct. So you did prove something.
That's right.
That's science. So, and then you can do it again and again, and your peers can do it also, and keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's science, not the science is settled. I mean, come on. That's I don't understand. Maybe I've always been a little bit of a go against the flow kind of person. Like I used to deliberately not go see like a certain movie just because everyone was like, "Oh, it's so good, you should go see it." Like I used to kind of be like that. And so
what's Star Wars about? I've never heard of it.
Right. But maybe that's that part of me that I've always been thinking about, things and questioning things. I didn't question what the earth is, but what I mean? I've always been, I like to think about things and I'm logical. So maybe as an easier arrival at some of these, finding out some of these deceptions. But that is a great question, is why can't we challenge? And, because if it's true, it's true, right? Truth doesn't need to fear anything. What they say, it's like a lion, right? I think you've said that even. Truth is like a lion, or you just let it loose, it defend itself.
That's
I heard it somewhere before. I didn't make that up, but yeah. So we should. What's wrong with? And there's the other part. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, being skeptical. Let's ask 10 questions. But if for anyone who's paying attention, when questioning in and of itself is demonized, there is a deep problem. That is a indicator that there is a deep problem. If you're not even allowed to question, that should send shivers up people's spines and everyone, no matter what the topic is. How would you not be allowed to ask a question? You
Even
know, and
our
that's that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, it's just that's like that bully. That's like a bully mentality. Scare everybody and stop asking questions.
That's right. I was going to say today in the news, our dear friends in Taiwan, they're passing a new law that is criminalizing the spreading of rumors or disinformation during wartime. And you saw last year they tried to do that here with that nut job with the information, little truth thing, and they're trying to revise Section 230 so they can basically stop. They just want one line of information, and it's whoever's in charge. And if you go against the grain, you're going to get crushed. I think if we don't do something drastic to change the course of this country 10 years from now, and if you don't think you recognize it now in just from 2019 to 2023, imagine what this country is going to look like in 10 years.
Oh man, yeah, it sends gives me chills, and not in a good way. But the funny thing is, the governments that are making those rules, about how you can't spread disinformation, they're the ones spreading disinformation.
Exactly.
They're the ones saying, "Oh, see that light in the sky at night? Yeah, we went there and we walked around up there and we played golf." No, you didn't. Like, stop spreading disinformation. Oh, but you're allowed to. I'm not allowed to say something that's true. I'm not even allowed to just question and say, wow, look how bright the moon is. Like, I can't imagine it's actually a quarter of a million miles away, because it would be so bright it would like melt your face.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, you can't ask that though. It's really, we live in the upside down, George.
Yeah, we certainly do. And, that's Flat Earth again. That's one of those things that made me realize how few people actually control the world, because you see it ridiculed on TV. It's intentionally brought up in certain aspects, maybe a late night TV show. Of course, President Obama did a good job of directing people to the Flat Earth Society. He didn't just mention Flat Earth, he mentioned the Flat Earth Society. And people went to that website and saw the lunacy of a flat disc floating upwards of 8 miles per hour or something silly. And I've said many times, between Hollywood and television, with your Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, all those type of shows, and then the subtle programming of, again, there's globes in every TV show and every movie. So they're very smart about how they do it. And again, I believe the reason is to hide God, to get people away from God. That's my opinion on why it's done.
I agree 100%. It is it's the big killer, right? It's the God killer. Because if you buy into, and people say, well, there's a lot of Christians that, believe the earth is round. Yeah. And that's fine. God has ways of reaching people. Right. But they're missing out. They're still in the matrix. Right. I think of it that way. And yeah, hiding God. If you are a glob of goo that spawned from nothing, right, and you're hurtling through an infinite void with no purpose or direction per se, and it does something to your mind, even if you don't wholly buy into it. Maybe if some of that you think is real, it does something to you. I really think that it does. And you're missing out on your full potential, on that special connection. And that is what happens to people when they set aside the ego and say, okay, I'm going to take a look at this subject and they realize we are in a created realm. I'll use the word realm, and there is a creator. Oh my gosh. If there's a creator, then what? And all these questions start coming in. And I mean, even Dave Weiss himself said he was, atheist, bought
Yep.
into all the evolution, Big Bang, and all that, and definitely knows there's a creator. I don't, that's about maybe as far as he goes with it, but it's something, right? It's a step in the right direction.
That's right.
In the direction that's real. It's real. And I tell you what, there is not one moment that I am bored
No,
anymore.
no.
There is no boredom. And I like looking at things like the moon and just taking a deep breath and look at it and say, man, this place is awesome. This place is awesome. And I think there's a lot of things that are hidden from us about, things that are true.
Yes.
I look at things like the Northern Lights and I wonder, what is going on here, right? It could be a magnetic phenomenon, but it's not happening on a ball that we're all stuck to somehow, right? And we wonder. It even says in Scripture that we wonder at his creation, and that if I don't like thinking this way, but if I were the enemy, the evil, this is what I would do. Like this is the best lie that I in my arsenal of lies, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it really makes sense.
And again, I think it's important when you're having these conversations with deniers, these globalists, globers, I guess, not globalists, globers. And I'm starting to sound like Alex Jones. Ask them for the Darwins, the people, the science folks. Go to Google. Encourage them to go to Google for these two questions, not DuckDuckGo or Yandex. How old is Earth? According to scientism, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So point that out. And then secondly, ask them, how fast is Earth hurtling through space? It is orbiting around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour. You think about that with those numbers, 4.5 billion years, and especially if they're Bible-believing Christians, I'm going to say, how can you support scientism when you know the Bible clearly states where the Earth is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old? So when people see the contradictions, and again, it's up to them to be able to decide if they're going to open their mind or not. But these numbers that they use are very, they're contrary to the Bible. And it's not even close. It's not like the Darwinian, or however you say, Charles Darwin's theory of that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. It's not like he said it's 10,000 years old and there's only a 4,000 year disparage. It's 4.5 billion years versus 6,000 years. It's a, the Bible's very clear. It's on pillars. It's not moving, and there is a firmament. And the flood explains the firmament. The windows of the firmament were open. It just wasn't a really rainy day for 40 days and 40 nights. He opened the heavens and the water came through. It's biblical. And when they see these numbers, it's not even close. So you would think for people who were Bible believers, it would be easier to explain.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the creation account. It has a new meaning for me now.
Absolutely.
You read it again now and it's like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this stuff? I was ashamed that I read, but I didn't see, right? And the creation account is amazing. I encourage anybody, whether you're a Bible person or not, read Genesis 1, the creation account, and just read what's there. And it is awesome, talking about water, and then God made dry ground appear. That's actually what the word earth, it just means the ground.
Yep.
Right? So there's ground that popped up amidst the water, and it starts. I read really slow just to make sure, and I get lots of questions. So I'm like, maybe the water was there before. If God's the creator, then obviously he created the water, but the water was there maybe.
Right.
And then there's the land, and the land is the earth. And yeah, and I think it's like not until the fourth day there's light, right? The first thing is light. So what's the light coming from? Like he didn't do sun, or he didn't do sun and moon until like day 4. It's like, what's the light coming from? It's really mind blowing. You got to read it again. If you're listening to this and you haven't gone back since your flat Earth journey, you got to read it again. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, and so when we're talking to people, it's really important to clarify words, and a lot of times it's effective just to ask questions. And like you said, okay, even if you're talking about Darwin, the earth, they say, we think the earth's 4 billion years old or whatever it is, a question like this, say, well, what is the earth? And make them explain it. Okay, how big is it? How do you know this? Right? Well, most people won't even know how the story goes that we know, quote unquote, the size of the globe and all this. Most people don't even know the main, I'll just say the mainstream story. But I don't know if you listen to Nathan Oakley very much.
I don't think so.
Nathan Oakley, his YouTube channel is Nathan Oakley 1980. It's FED, Flat Earth Debate, every day. It's 9 a.m. Eastern every day, live show. I think he's on show like 1700 and some. A lot of people. He's British. He's kind of crass. Kind of.
What's his name again? Sorry,
Nathan Oakley.
I'm trying to pull him up, so I don't.
Yeah, Nathan Oakley 1980 is the YouTube channel.
Oh, got him. Okay.
Yeah, he and a lot of, even within flat Earth circles, he fights and argues with certain people about certain things, but just as flat Earth people, we'll just say we're flat earthers and we're learning. You have to listen to that show. And I don't like everything he does, but the value in what those guys talk about is tremendous. And it's all boiled down to these basic, very first step things like, the Earth, they say the Earth is, 8,000 miles, whatever, in diameter. And it's like, well, how do you know this? And they break it down to, it's all assumptions, and that all of these measurements are angle measurements that are taken from a flat plane.
Yep.
So there's measurements taken from a flat plane because that's the only way to get an angle, right? Is you have to have a flat baseline to get an angle.
That's right.
So that, I'm not doing a good job of explaining what they do on the show, and it's next level stuff. Like sometimes I get a little lost. I'm like, this is a little bit over my head, but it's really good, and they are absolute masters at logical fallacies and spotting them, and they hold on like a bulldog and don't let go. If you're trying to, use a fallacy in your argument, they won't let you go any farther until that's resolved, right? Or you frame it a different way. It's just excellent. And I've learned a lot on how to talk to people. I wouldn't talk to people like they do sometimes, because they just yell and scream at them and make fun of them.
Gotcha.
Even though they're right. Yeah. But it's very important to clarify your words. And I've noticed, I love Dave Weiss, but sometimes he gets a little ahead of himself. This is my opinion. And um, he talks about things without clarifying, like, because people who are globies, right, they're still thinking in terms of outer space
Right.
and um, atmosphere and globe and planet. And, you know, I encourage people to like start over somehow. If you're talking to somebody, say, look, let's forget everything. We're going to like, we're going to build a world. Like, let's say it's a video game and we're starting with nothing and we're going to build a world. And then build what you think the best representation of where we live is. And you can say, I'm not really sure about some of this, but just pretend with me for a minute, like follow me. Then build it. Then when you're explaining things, if they have any sense of an imagination, they'll I think they'll understand better. Because if you don't do that to some degree, just like you said, they're going to visualize a pancake floating in space from the Flat Earth Society. Right? I did. I made that mistake too. I saw that and said, this is dumb.
Exactly.
It's the dumbest thing ever. And so right off the bat, after you've gone through your preliminary questions and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of interested to learn, but it sounds crazy. Okay. Throw out there, look, Flat Earth Society, gone. You destroy that. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. The whole heliocentric model, we got to throw that in the trash. Just so you, the globy person I'm talking to, you can understand what I mean. And I think that would help. And we need to be very precise with our language.
Yes.
I don't use, I've said it a few times with you because we know what we're talking about, but I don't use, in everyday life, I do not use the word globe. I don't use the word atmosphere. I don't use the word theory with flat Earth. I don't use the word planet. Right? If I'm talking to a normie person and we look up and they say, "Oh, that's whatever," I'm like, "Yep, that's one of those wandering stars." Yeah. And then they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're actually called wandering stars."
Right? They're not planets.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm perfect that I have never said those words, but I'm trying to change my whole, what I'm putting out there, and I don't even say around the world, right? I say across the world. And those are just nitpicky things that I do, but I personally think that it helps. It just helps me. And I'll tell you one thing, George, it's tough because that programming is so ingrained in my brain. I've probably been known to let the word planet slip out here and there.
Sure.
I try
absolutely.
not to. It's in there so deep. You have to make a concerted effort to not, do it. But I think destroying the Flat Earth Society, destroying the heliocentric model with the person you're talking to, so that you can start, even if they think what you're doing is dumb, you say, look, I want you to understand what I'm trying to explain, so let's just start over. That could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it's a the silver bullet thing to do, but being very careful with our words and our language and things like that and being patient, because everybody should just remember their own flat earth journey and remember it didn't happen overnight. And I'll quote you, George, from an episode or two ago. You said everybody has to wake up at their own pace in their own time.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head, man. And that's great. That's great. So we should be patient, one little thing at a time. There's a guy, I'm on Discord platform with some people and some really good people, and he was like, oh, people at my office want to learn, and some of them are like, kind of snickering at it or whatever. And I was like, what if you just did one question a day or a week or a month, doesn't matter. Just one question, right? Or one topic.
Yeah.
Just throw it out there. Hey, we're not going to sit around and discuss. I'm going to give you one little question and you go look and we'll talk again next week. And then don't even talk about it. I've never done that, but that could be fun. And it takes the pressure off a little bit because you could have your one question ready and you probably already know what the answer is going to be.
That's right.
Right. So you're ready with your follow up. You say, you come back with your answer and then I get to rebut. Right. And then we'll walk away and do the next one. That could be. And so there was a guy I was talking to. He may try that.
That's a good idea. I always say less is more with Flat Earth. It will build natural curiosity after the first couple of weeks, and they'll find that one video, which they may even ask you for. Hey, man, I get that all the time. You got a good video, and you shoot it off, and it's over. In many cases, by the end of the first video, they realize, and it's shocking. I don't know how many people. I couldn't imagine their first real awakening being Flat Earth. That was really my last hurdle. The two big ones for me, with it out, was 9/11, which was a punch in the stomach because it directly affected my life. And of course, Flat Earth was, I guess they're lying about everything. That's when you really realize you have to take your critical thinking skills to a whole nother level.
Yes. And that there's I went through a little bit of a time where I threw my hands up and I'm like, well, nothing's real then. Everything's fake. Everything's a lie.
Yeah.
Right. And I got depressed. And, but I think that's the wrong way to go because of course there are things that are real. There are things that are true and there's things that are good. And, so I had to shake that off a little bit. So, if someone's listening to your show and they're kind of new, just be careful of that. That's the dark side. And these days, I feel like there's two realities. Just bear with me on this one.
Yeah.
There's two realities. There's the electronic one, and then there's the real one. And the electronic reality is the social media and how you interact and exist electronically. And then there's the real reality, the flesh and blood, the neighbors talking to neighbors while they're mowing their lawn. That's real.
Right.
And the enemy and people who work for the enemy, whether they're human or not, they want you to think that the electronic reality is real. They want you to think that because it isn't. So they're going to impress upon you all of these ideas. Oh my gosh, you got to be afraid of this. You got to be afraid of that. Oh, everyone hates each other, right? Black people hate white people. White people hate black people, right? That's what they want you to think. Then if you focus on the real reality and you go out and you talk to your neighbors and the people at your kids' school and you go to soccer games and you talk to people there, they don't match. Those two systems, they don't match. We don't hate each other. Like we live, I got neighbors of all colors. I got neighbors of all belief systems, political ideas, all kinds of mixtures. We get along fine. Like we're coexisting. We're friends, right? We borrow eggs and sugar from each other. We give each other rides. So there's a disconnect there. And so right now, we're on electronic media and they're just tools that are useful and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you live in that medium, it's just going to tear you up and it's not real.
It is dangerous. And I think it's really ironic that you brought that up because I actually recorded my podcast for tomorrow night earlier today. And it was Ted Kaczynski in the Unabomber. And a lot of people don't really know They know, oh, there's a guy who sent, bombs through the mail. But they don't really realize was the only reason he did that was to get people's attention. And he was warning about the industrial society and its future. And he knew that technology was going to become more of a detriment to the human race than anything out there. And I even played the entire 2.5 hour manifesto, 35,000 word manifesto. And it's really, I'll tell you what, it was written back in the early to mid 90s, I think 95. And he wasn't, of course, I don't condone anybody sending bombs through the mail, but he wasn't very far off on his warning.
Well, I will admit that's a rabbit hole that intrigues me. I don't know much about it, but having learned what I have so far about many things, I'm beginning to think that since we live in an inversion, that if certain things come from the TV information, I mean,
yes, mm-hmm.
It's probably the opposite.
100%.
And I don't just automatically say, oh, they're saying this, so it's opposite for sure. I just am cautious, and there's a part of me now that does usually think either there's a little bit of truth in there with a lot of propaganda, or it's a complete inversion. And if I look back historically at things that we can discover more about, because things that are older, you got more information you can dig up on it, you find out that it usually is that way.
Absolutely. And I always say lies in the media, truth in Hollywood, because you go back and look at some of the movies over the last 30 years, whether it be Contagion or those other things, they tell you what's coming in the movies. They don't always lie in the media. Sometimes they'll mix truth with lies, but they certainly will do their best to steer you in the wrong direction. The interesting thing about Ted Kaczynski, I always say, when you go down a rabbit hole far enough, it goes off to another rabbit hole that you've covered before. And one thing I didn't realize in my studies on Ted Kaczynski was at the age of, I want to say, I'm just trying to remember here, but I think it was the age of 13 or so, maybe 14. He took an IQ test, and he was tested out at 167. He ended up graduating high school at the age of 15, and he entered Harvard, right, one of the most prestigious colleges in America, at the age of 16. And that had a big effect on him, because while he was with, amongst his colleagues intellectually, he was bullied, harassed, because here's a 16-year-old kid with 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old men. That was rather difficult on him, but also was, I don't know if you know this, but 3 years under Project MKUltra at Harvard University. He spent some 200 hours under Project MKUltra by the blessings of the CIA. So this guy, and again, this didn't come out till several years after his trial. I think his trial was 96, 97, and it came out in 2003 that this guy, at a very young age, was subject to MKUltra, and yet they still sent him to jail for life. It's really a twisted story, and just another piece of evidence. Why do we continue to blindly trust our government when they do things like this?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and there's a perfect example of something that brings up potentially many questions that should have been fleshed out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even MKUltra itself, was denied that program even existed. Of course, you end up finding out, oh yeah, the quote unquote conspiracy theorists were right.
Once again.
Yeah. And if you know about that, the mind control stuff, and how could you move forward with a regular, trial on someone? Maybe they were under MKUltra,
Absolutely.
control when they did whatever. That just right there just reeks of deception all over the place. At least enough that it should be looked into. I mean, obviously you are, but I'm talking about on a court level, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My
That's
audience
really
is
interesting.
0.01%, 0.001% of the population. And most people, Ted Kaczynski, he's a guy who sent mails, bombs through the mail. End of story. And again, that goes back to our education system. Just whatever's in the history books, take it for gospel. We don't really dig any further. And that's something I hope we work on as a society. If there's one thing I could change other than bringing out the truth about certain things, if we could dissolve the federal level of education, let it bring it back to the states, that would be a huge victory for us and one step closer to gaining. I chose not to. I pulled my child from the public education system many years ago, and again, I don't. I was a Glober for 49 years. Many of my children participated in public education. I don't try to be all high and mighty, and how dare you put your child in a public education. But I think it is a dangerous. It's not like 2005 anymore. It's not 1998 anymore. We're at a point where these very, very evil people are trying to capture not just the minds but the souls of your children. It's a very dangerous place. And again, there's many teachers out there who are doing their best to make a difference. And in many cases, school is a safe place for some children. They have terrible home situations. But at the same time, really, we need to focus. We have one of the worst education systems in the world, and we're supposedly, one of the wealthiest countries. So something's not working right here.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And the way education is now is just, pump out. They're pumping out, worker bees is all it is. There's no guidance on how to think about things, how to get to answers to questions like on your own, or if you can, right? Or how would you do that? Oh, well, this, here's a little fact about this, da 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 da. Ask questions about it, right? I encourage my kids. My kids are all awake to all of this, and I never once made them think a certain way. I just was presenting all of the information. I was presenting information that they and me never got. And I was like, this might be this way. We're told this. I don't know. This is, this looks this way. What do you think? And those are the discussions. So I'm always encouraging them when they're in school. And sometimes I'm not sure if that's the best place for them to be in public school, but but that's where we're at right now. And I always encourage them. There's nothing wrong with just asking a question. When your teacher says,
Absolutely.
"Oh, Jupiter is this big," "Oh, you raise your hand. How do we know it's that big?" Right. And I'm sure they have some answer.
Of course.
And then you can ask a follow-up. Yeah. Okay, well, how about this? How about that? And, I get it. I didn't really want to, I was a go against the flow kind of person a little bit, but I didn't really want to draw attention to myself if I was 15. Right. So I get it if they don't want to speak up. I wish I was 15 now, knowing what I know now.
No kidding, right?
I would be the most hated student for my teachers because of the questions and the, making them think too. And nothing against teachers. I don't think teachers go into teaching thinking, ha ha ha, now I can, brainwash children.
Oh, of course not. They want to go and want to make a difference in children's lives. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And they've actually, I feel bad for teachers. They've been robbed of that. And some teachers have a gift for that. And they've really been robbed of that because they got to follow the curriculum, man.
Yeah.
You got to do what the book says. And that's that. And,
that
maybe
was
get
my
a little
plan.
creative, but. Yeah. Oh, really?
When I retired, the whole time in the Army until about 5 years prior, I was going to retire. I was wrapping up my degree, Texas A&M. I was going to go and they had something called Soldiers to Teachers or something like that program. And then you really see, I got to sit in on some some classes and things, and I was shocked at how much it had changed. And how little, not, it was a very tight program. You didn't have a lot of fluctuation on how to present information to them. And they were told me it's just the guidelines, and money was involved. And basically a lot of it was educating the student, or teaching the students to pass a certain test. I think it's called the STAR test or something, in order for funding certain, it was on and on and on. I just kind of lost interest in it. And it wasn't even as much as the students as the parents out there. It was just not what I remembered, and I kind of lost interest and ended up going the business route. But again, there's a lot of great teachers out there who really do try hard and make a difference in people's lives. It's not the teachers, it's not even the school districts in most cases. It's the government, which really has no business being involved in education. That should be between the parents and the school districts.
Yes, you're right. And we're all of us are to some degree, even still, we're in the matrix.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. We're all, to a degree, some of us know that we're in the matrix, right? And others don't know they're in the matrix, but we're all in it to some degree. And yeah, let's not forget that. And just, be kind to people.
Yep.
And don't forget that we thought it was dumb too. Flat Earth. That is the dumbest
100%.
thing I ever heard of.
Yep.
I literally, the first thing I thought of when I heard those words, other than being sad, I thought, the person who told me was going to have to be committed. I thought of, I think it was a Bugs Bunny cartoon where they like go off the edge or something. It's like Christopher Columbus or something, and a Bugs Bunny episode. And I just that's how dumb it is. Bugs Bunny makes fun of it. That's how stupid it is. And boy, was I wrong. And I realized I was stupid. I was dumb. Dumb meaning, ignorant. I just didn't know anything. And that's really where we're at now. Is I don't know everything, of course. I would never claim that. But, and as a matter of fact, I realize there's so much we actually don't know.
Yep.
And science, I'll put that in quotes, right? Science seems to just have all the answers. And that right there to me is a tell. That is a clue. If anyone claims to have all the answers, man, perk your ears up, because there's some deception going on.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson has all the answers.
Right. Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the failed actor or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
King of scientism.
Yeah, so it's just wild. And it's interesting because I came across your stuff when I was listening to the Fact Hunter,
mm-hmm.
and every episode you were saying things that I'm like, I say that. And then there'd be another episode, and you talked about like volunteerism, and I'm like, oh, I talk about that, and then when I came across Flat Earth Files, I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is, this same guy, the Fact Hunter. I was like, he's good. And now he's doing only Flat Earth stuff. I was like, man, I was rubbing my hands. I was like, this is going to get good. and it has been. So I've appreciated your show a lot.
Well, I'm glad it worked out, because I was very nervous, because Flat Earth is very difficult on the audio side of the house, and there's not a whole lot of it out there. So, my buddy, my wife, we talked about it for a long time, and I said, I think there's enough material out there. And I said, it's a tight, one thing about the Flat Earth community, it's a very close-knit community, and while we share some differences, we're human beings, we're not all going to agree on everything. It's a very kind, universe, for lack of a better words. Everybody is kind to each other. And I said, I think we could get some people on and have some great discussions. And it's really worked out. I'm really blessed that it worked out its way. And I hope to continue on for quite some time. We're We're coming in. I have about 10 minutes left. Two things. Number one, was there anything else with Flat Earth that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention? Because I wanted to give you a few minutes to talk about your website and your podcast as well before we leave.
Yeah, just one last thing is even within like the Flat Earth YouTubers and things like that, there's some infighting going on. If you follow a lot of different people, um, that's it's okay that there's disagreements out there. And what I've learned is not to um, I typically don't stop listening or stop watching someone just because they say a couple things that I don't agree with,
Sure.
because there's still so much value. And so I wanted to just recommend some people. I already talked about Nathan Oakley, 1980. That's Flat Earth Debate. It's every weekday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And anyone can actually pop on to the Discord there and talk. They're looking for Globers that want to come in and try to make their case. But there's a guy on YouTube called Flat Earth and Coffee. He is excellent. And there's another guy, Level Earth Observer. He basically rips apart NASA videos. His videos are short. So a lot of Flat Earth videos are long, but there's some short ones out there.
Good.
I don't know if you know Austin Whitsitt. His channel is Whitsitt Gets It. And then Crow 777 Radio.
Yeah, I love Crow. Yeah.
Yeah, Crow is amazing.
Yep.
His, I said I'm obsessed with the moon, and part of that is because of Crow and his lunar wave video. If anybody listening hasn't seen that, look up. It's Crow with 2 R's, right? Crow 777 Radio, and look up lunar wave, and it's just awesome. And just there's others, but and so there's not always agreements, but these guys give you the tools you need to make your kung fu strong.
There you go. Talk a little bit about Awake the Iron.
Yeah, so like I was saying, back in around COVID time, well, so the Flat Earth journey began in 2018, but then when COVID I don't know what you call it, happened, the pandemic, whatever, the big farce.
Yeah.
We saw right through it. I mean, we saw it coming, we saw right through it. So it was very frustrating, and just needed to talk it out. And my co-host and I, we have good conversations all the time anyway. And we're like, hey, our conversations are kind of like podcasts, so we should just like record them. We're like, yeah, okay. And then, but also kind of wanted to start getting info out. And my plan was to start up the stairway of deception, and maybe start with some easier ones and work up to this one. So I haven't gotten to this one yet because we got a little sidetracked because we were in the middle of COVID, and there were so many things that were current and relevant.
Absolutely.
It kind of, every day there was like, oh my gosh, there's this, there's that. They're trying to do this, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But it was an outlet for me, and it helped me. It was like therapy. And our goal is just to ask questions, and I want to expose deception, no matter what it is. And that's what I want to do. And Awake the Iron is just a representation of like armies would, stand on opposing hills. They're getting ready to do battle, and they start making a bunch of noise to intimidate the other side, right? And I felt like the world controllers, the dark side, has been making a lot of noise to intimidate us. And I had this thought in my mind that, like, this picture in my mind that, you know what, we can do that too. And we can awake the iron, which is, we can rattle our armor, and, we have power that we didn't realize or didn't think about. And so that's how that kind of started, and it's been going great. And I've got to get to meet lots of cool people, and I know you know how that goes. You know, you get to talk to lots of interesting people and hear all
Absolutely.
kinds of stuff. It's so great, and it's a they you know, the evil side, they want us separated and not connecting. And so this is a way to connect. And I just love that. I love that. I've made some good friends through all this. And yeah, I got website awaketheiron.com. The podcast is Awake the Iron. Pretty simple. I got a hotline phone number, 601-654-IRON. You can call or text. So, you know, just say whatever. And it's been real good. It's been great.
And that was, say that one more time, 605
654
654.
601
Oh, 601. I'm sorry.
654 iron.
Okay. And by the way, that if you go to his website, Awake the Iron, and click on contact, the phone number is right there as well.
It is right there. Thank you. And then I did want to mention real quick, we do have a portion of the website, and we're adding to it continually, but it's called the Awake the Iron Academy. And it's basically like an archive of documents, videos, lectures, photos. And what was happening was, through all these rabbit holes, and you know how it goes, you can start to accumulate stuff. And I was like, man, we should like put it somewhere where it was for me, it was for internal use originally. I was like, that way, if I needed, like you were saying, hey, do I have a video on, you know, Yuri Bezmenov or whatever? I can have a place where it just is stored, right? That me and other people that work with me on the podcast could just get to it. And then it's like all of a sudden it's a no-brainer. It's like, why don't we just make it a tab on the website, and you could just go in there, and you know, anyone can just go in there and find stuff. And there is a ton of stuff, a lot of medical stuff. And I'm going to be adding whole tabs. I'm going to add a science tab, and you know what'll go there. So
It's really well done. Go to his link, ATI Academy. There's a plethora of information under COVID-19. Then there's a link for health, money, and banking, which one of the subjects close to my heart. He has the creature from Jekyll Island there, G. Edward Griffin. And then what's the law and government? Just a bunch of information. Make sure, again, go to his website, Awake the Iron. Feel free to contact him. There's a contact form. You can reach out to him. Again, there's the phone number, 601-654-IRON. And wow, you've been just a tremendous guest, Cason, and I'd like to give you the floor for any last words.
well, this has been awesome. I'm honored to be able to talk to you, and because I'm a fan, so I'm a little bit of a fanboy. And so it's kind of cool to be able to talk to you, and we're very alike in many ways. You can still have good conversations with people that you're not like.
Absolutely.
But we really, you know, a lot of you say great things, and just present things in a great way. And I couldn't have asked for anything more out of starting my own podcast, which really the joy of it has been talking to other people.
That is my
so
favorite part.
I just really appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I encourage people to, and I'm saying this to myself as much as anyone else, don't be afraid to just talk to people about it. But you don't have to, quote unquote, flat smack them, right? Maybe some people you could, but just bring stuff up. Just ask questions, and get people rolling. And maybe somebody will snap and say, what are you, some kind of flat earther? And be like, well, you know, what do you mean by that? You know, make people define themselves. Well, you know, blah, 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 whatever they say. And stay calm, be patient. And it's okay if you don't have the answer. You know, go and you can always say, you know, I'm not really sure about that. Let's learn together. Right?
Yeah, that's a
that would
great
be
delivery.
good. And instead of, oh, you're stupid. No, you're stupid, and then stick your tongue out and run away. Let's not do that. Keep the conversation going, whatever it takes. Again, if it's someone who's willing, they go through those precursor questions and they pass, keep the conversation going. Like, you really think that you could go in a rocket, 17,000 miles an hour? What are the G's? What kind of G's are those guys put under? And then show them a video of the guys in the rocket under those kind of G's. And, they look fine, but you look at Blue Angels pilots under even less G's than that, and their faces look like they're going to melt.
Yep.
And you go, why does that look different? I wonder. And then you can throw your hands up. I don't know. I could be wrong. What do you think about it? Right. So let's just approach it that way. And I think it would be more fruitful.
Well said. And again, Cason, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hope to hear from you again in the future. And again, everyone, make sure you check the show description for the website, Awake the Iron. And don't forget, tomorrow night, we have another interview lined up with a listener, Megan, and looking forward to that as well. For Cason, I'm George. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, my friends, keep your head on a swivel, and we will see you.
You're listening to the Fact Hunter Radio Network.
Just the facts, ma'am.